Hello there. I'm Scotty. You're not. It is time to talk about the second Arrowverse crossover, technically. Third, actually. Third. Uh, and this is the first time that we actually have a full scope of shows, whereas the last two have just been Flash and Arrow, and, the first one, Flash versus Arrow, and whatever the second part was called, uh, Raven the Bold or something. They were just Flash and Arrow. And then technically the second crossover is also Flash and Arrow, but it's setting up Legends of Tomorrow. But this one you have Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, and Supergirl, with only Supergirl making an appearance. And yes, there was an episode of Supergirl that is technically connected to this crossover, but not really. It's called Medusa. It's like the 7th or 8th episode of that season. But the only thing that really is connected to this crossover is that you see Barry and Cisco a little bit, and then towards the end they show up. So there's really nothing important in that episode but that. So yeah, and this crossover could have been good. I think it's decent, but the biggest problem I've always had with this crossover is that they decided that the 100th episode of Arrow needed to be a part of this crossover. So right in the middle of this crossover, we got Aliens. We take a break to celebrate 100 episodes of Arrow when it just, I don't know. It always seemed, I'll explain how it happens, but it's always, every time I watch this crossover, it always feels like, okay, we're going for this, we're going to take out Aliens, and then, boom, it's all, 100 episodes of Arrow, even though we have a little bit of stuff with the characters on the side doing stuff in our world, as a point to this mirage that they have created, it's always taken away from the plot to me. And I think they realized that because they added the secondary stuff with characters, but it's still really just Arrow because it's Flash, Supergirl, and Cisco interacting with the Team Arrow. And then you have everything inside this Dominator hallucination with former Arrow characters coming back, characters that should be dead, that sort of thing. And then we get the conclusion to this crossover. It makes me think that maybe they didn't have enough when they were writing this. They're like, well, let's just put this 100th episode of Arrow in, and we'll just say the aliens, put them in, we'll work it in, add the aliens to it, and then we have a full crossover. I don't know. It feels like they had two parts and stretched it out with this. I don't know. But so we start with aliens invading. And so Lila from Arrow shows up. She's in charge of Argus now by this point. And so I purposely left some stuff out of my season 3 review of The Flash. I specifically did not mention that to power the Speed Force cannon towards the end of season 3, they used Dominator tech. And they had to have Captain Cold help them. I will explain more with Captain Cold once I get into doing the Legends reviews, but there's a specific reason that Flash had to time travel to go get him. So, not just because he was with the Legends. I'm just saying. So, if you already seen Legends, you know what happens, but I'm just saying. And it's very difficult to talk Legends stuff, but, due to not reviewing Legends yet, but I'm not going to intersect seasons. I have to have all the seasons of Arrow, Flash, and Supergirl, or Arrow and Supergirl to do it, which I'm working on, but those will be eventualities because I'm doing it mostly for the crossovers. Eventually I'll get into Arrow once I finish. I'm doing an order of how I like the shows. So you got Flash, then I'm going to do Legends, then I'm going to do Arrow, and then Supergirl at the end. I might even put out a review for Batwoman season 1. Don't expect me to do the other seasons. Who knows? By then I'm like, okay, I'm a collection whore. I'm a completionist. I'll get it. But anyway, this first part is aliens, and Lyla basically says, no, don't do anything. The government would deal with it. Argus would deal with it. But of course, they're like, we have to do something. And And they're like, Barry, we can't do it on our own. We don't have to. So then we cut to Team Arrow, which at this point is just Diggle and Oliver, because the other characters are not in this. I mean, as they show up in part 2, you always wonder, why weren't they helping them? And why aren't they in this? They're not, because, well, there was a certain thing where they would have certain characters in certain episodes of crossover. Like, because each part of a crossover is technically an episode of a TV series, there was always that, it was more distinct in style, tone, music, that sort of thing. And characters. So that's why in the first part it feels more like an episode of The Flash. The second part, very much an episode of Arrow. And in the third part, it feels like an episode of Legends of Tomorrow. Due to the tone, the music, just everything, and the fact that there are more characters from that show on it. Like in this first episode, you got H.R. Wells, Wally, Joe, what's her name? Iris, sorry, and Caitlin. Caitlin is, she's in 2 parts, I think, at least. As is Professor Stein, Jax, who were connected to the Flash because Jax showed up in season 2. Firestorm will always be connected to the Flash, so they're in there. And then you have Sarah, Mick, Ray, the important members. They say that Nate and Amaya are back on the Wave Rider because they're not needed. They show up in part 3, and we don't see the rest of Team Arrow except for Thea, Felicity, and of course Oliver and Diggle. This episode actually starts off with a, oh, this is what's going to happen later type thing, where Barry and Oliver, Flash and Arrow, they're running from something, and it turns out to be their friends. Loosely friend with Mick Rory, but yeah. And then we cut to the rest of the episode, but they all get together and they introduce Supergirl to them, who's an alien, and there's a plot point from Legends where Jax and Professor Stein found a message from Barry 40 years in the future. And look, I didn't mention this in my season 3 review, but why is it that when you're representing someone from the future, the voice has to be deeper? I don't understand that. When Barry travels to 2024, you have another Barry who looks very similar to what he looks like now. He has more stubble, his hair's a little more scraggly because he's kind of depressed, but he kind of has, he talks like this. And this one, it's Grant Gustin, but his voice has been augmented, so he sounds kind of like this, even though I sound like Dean from Supernatural. Just kind of very low sounding. I'm like, why? Why would his voice change like that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Once you hit a certain age, your voice isn't going to change. Like I'm 35 years old. You're saying in 20 years, my voice is going to get deeper like this. I know you'll sound different once you're older, but not that much. But it's a it's a message saying that you cannot trust anything, even Barry. Which is a nod to Savitar, but they play it off here like it's because he went back in time and did Flashpoint. But later it's revealed it's most likely because of Savitar, and this would make more sense if this aired later in the episode, later in the season, where by now we didn't know that Barry was Savitar. Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't watched my review or seen season 3. Yeah, Barry, another version of Barry is Savitar. It doesn't make, I don't know. And always, I'm like, why wouldn't they trust him? And then later, like, oh, see Savitar, but, I don't know. I don't know. And a lot of people complain, well, wouldn't Barry know that Rip Hunter is not a part of Legends anymore? Yeah, I guess. I don't know. But because of this, everybody's like, no. He reveals what changed. Cisco's brother is dead. Caitlin has powers. Baby Sarah, John's child. Baby Sarah is not baby John. Is Is that it? I know there was Wally has powers. That's really not part of Flashpoint. Well, Savitar is, I guess. But and speaking of Wally, this was during the part of the season where he just got powers, but they didn't want him to help out. Why? Because two speedsters would be OP. So yeah. And spoiler alert: Wally is never in a crossover again. Although they could use him in some shape or form, especially in Crisis on Infinite Earths, they never use him in a crossover, like at all. I don't think so. He's in one part of Crisis on Earth X, but he's not really used to his full potential. And I feel like they was like, oh, we can't have more than one speedster. They could have used him in this. Just saying. But yeah, because of that, they don't trust him, and so they say he has to stay behind when they go to investigate because the president gets kidnapped, and there's this old aging guy who's basically above Lava, I guess. We find out his name is Agent Smith, and he's sort of an antagonist. Like I always hate it when you have these kind of things. There's aliens or zombies, and you have to have a human antagonist. Hey. Nothing against Colonel Rhodes in Day of the Dead, probably my favorite villain and my favorite death. Joe got him. Joe got him. Was he necessary? Not really. I mean, Romero put human villains all over those movies. Like the first one, the the ball guy in the basement was an antagonist, the human antagonist, more so than the. He was an antagonist more than the zombies. They just want to eat brains and stuff. He was the pain in the ass. That basically cost people their lives for not. I'm sorry. I need to get a drink. I'm sorry. I'm okay. I'm okay. It's just phlegm. It's just phlegm. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's getting it out of my system, right? I'm getting just phlegm, mucus. It's getting it out of my system, right? Drinking the Sprite, getting better. Anyway, what was I? Agent Smith. Yeah, he's basically a human antagonist, and then. He's not major antagonist yet. He does more connection than anything. So, and this kind of got me a little bit. So they leave behind and leave Oliver behind because he's like, I'm not going without Barry. Well, then you're staying here, and then Supergirl's in charge, which I understand a little bit. But at this point, like. The three big characters were Barry, Oliver, and Sarah. Sarah technically should be the next in command because she's the next longest tenure of a hero here. So, I don't know. But Supergirl is more powerful, I guess, but I still think Sarah would be next, then Supergirl. Maybe Sarah, then Ray. I don't know. Just thinking of, how it would work. Also, I should say we're introduced to this bunker that looks suspiciously like the Hall of Justice. Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice from Super Friends. Which later becomes the Hall of Justice, but then because they decided to cancel certain shows in the Arrowverse, then that didn't really go anywhere. And you could say maybe COVID had something to do with it. Pretty sure that's part of it, but then, I don't know. Was never really big into Black Lightning. Not that it's a bad show. Stopped watching Batwoman after season 1. I just didn't like how they decided to abandon Kate Kane's story, basically. And I know people like, watch the others. No. And they're not done ruining that character, but just say it. But, yeah, so the others, they go to get the president. It's a trap, and they're all hypnotized, which leads to the fight that we see at the beginning of this. But they're able to reverse it. Then, 5 of them, Oliver, Sarah, Thea, Diggle, and Rey are all transported and taken away. And it's later explained they do that because they're all human, they're not metahumans. But also, they're all characters that first showed up on Arrow. And then we get into part 2, which is the 100th episode of Arrow. And the episode itself is not bad. I just don't think it should have been part of the crossover. And I think they learned their lesson when it came to the Flash's 100th episode. Because that would have been right in the middle of Crisis on Different Earths. So, that episode aired either before or after. Hold on, it's in season 5, right? Got it right here. Someone's mowing the lawn right now. What's past is past. It was aired the week before Elseworlds. Oh, never mind. Whoops. Wait, Elseworlds is... Okay, so Elseworlds is the first part of Elseworlds in season 5 of The Flash. Maybe part 2 would be in season 6 of Arrow. I'm working on getting the other seasons so I can do Elseworlds, but no, 7 because because then we have Crisis on Earth X, which is known to be the best. I don't know, I have to rewatch it. I've rewatched it since I got the... And here's the thing. All 3 parts of that, 4 parts, all the parts of that are on the Legends of Tomorrow season 3 Blu-ray set. Sort of to spread it out. 4 parts, excuse me. That'd be the next crossover I do. But anyway, I forgot to mention, I'll talk about it in part 3. We're in part 2 now. And it's entirely Arrow, basically. The whole thing is the Dominators have taken the 5 Arrow cast members, people that started off on Arrow, and they put them in this alternate reality where Oliver is getting ready to get married to Laurel. Ray is engaged to Felicity Smoke. Thea is just normal, as is Sarah. And Diggle is the Green Arrow, or the Hood as they call him here. You get callbacks to characters, Quentin Lance, Laurel and Lance, Oliver's mom and dad, Malcolm Merlyn. They mentioned Tommy, and there's something out at the end of this, basically, and but they constantly go back and forth between seeing things, and they start to realize maybe this isn't real. We do have side plot in the real world with Barry, Kara, and Cisco going to the Arrow Cave. They meet up with Team Arrow, who at this point consisted of Rory, aka Ragman, Renee, aka Wild Dog, and there was one more. I can't remember his name. There's 3 of them, right? Ragman. It's back here, isn't it? It wouldn't be in the cast names, I know, but... Curtis Holt. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Fantastic. That's the other one. He was on the cast. Curtis Holt, a.k.a. Mr. Fantastic. No, not Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's fantastic. Mr. Fantastic. Who's also good with computers, by the way. And their side plot is basically trying to take down this Meta, who's using this Dominator tech or alien tech that they need to use to track alien tech, I guess. And also Renee doesn't like metas because, I don't know, they have all this power, and so he tries to explain it. I still don't understand it fully, but by the end he's fine. And then inside our little fake world. Oliver starts to realize this is better be real. He follows Diggle to the Arrow Cave. He tells him, "Get out of here! You're gonna get married." That sort of stuff. And because of this, he misses the rehearsal dinner, and they're all pissed at him. And this is where we get like a talk between Thea and Malcolm. And Bruce, another character showing up. Sarah realizes that when they're attacked by Deathstroke, that Sarah realizes that something else is going on, and they have to talk to Thea and Ray. Ray realizes pretty quick he's not a fiance. My fiance's name is Anna, or it was. He's not remember, and then Thea already knows, but she wants to stay there, and so the others go to leave, and there are basically villains from Arrow's past. You have the aforementioned Deathstroke. You have Merlin, who was just a good guy inside, and various others. I can't name them all off. Who the villains? Damien Dark, maybe? I don't know. I don't know. But, to defeat them, even with Thea showing up, and they go to the Smoke Technologies building and are able to jump through a portal and get back. And then they realize, the others back there realize they're in space. So they send the Wave Rider to rescue them. Nate sends a Wave Rider, and they translate this message that basically says the weapon is ready. And then we get to part 3. In part 3, I need to mention this. In part 1, Professor Stein, but before that, on Legends, Professor Stein was having weird memories, and now he landed in 2016. His memories start to come back, and he realizes he has a daughter. This is not Barry's fault, though, as it's revealed that when he was back in 1987, he basically berated the younger version of himself to love his wife more, and this resulted in having a child, which they never had any children, but now they do. They have a daughter named Lily, who is much like her father, very smart, and she helps them she helps him and Caitlin create this special thing to plant onto the Dominator so that they experience great pain, basically. So then we have our final showdown, basically. Fighting the Dominators. But also, because this is a Legend of Tomorrow episode, we got us to travel through time. So you have Nate, Amaya, Felicity, Mick, and Cisco traveling back to 1951 when when the Dominators first arrived and were attacked by the government because they want to take an alien so they can find out what's going on, talk to it, whatever. But the government, in a younger version of Agent Smith, show up and take them hostage as well, but they're able to, with the help of Felicity and Cisco, help to escape and rescue the Dominator. But it's revealed that this is why they're attacking now, because they came there because of Metahumans, which was the GSA at the time, and now they know Metahumans exist there, and it's taken all this time, 2016, what did they say, 45 years for them to, that makes sense, for this to happen, and now that's why they're doing it. Now we get our showdown with them, and it's a big CGI fight, but it's fun. Oliver's had some trust issues. It's Oliver Queen, trust issues with Kara. He falls off the building during the fight. Kara saves him, and he's like, you have that in there. And then there's a moment where, there's Dominators all over the Earth. This was like a job for Supergirl. Thanks, Felicity. And the Flash. Supergirl and the Flash. Totally what I meant. And and they go across, and I think they distribute the little things on them. They activate them, but there's still that big bomb, which is the weapon they talked about. So they have to have Firestorm use the molecular transfiguration to turn it into water. And basically, Stein says, I have a daughter, her name is Lily, and she's counting on me. And he does it, turns it into water. This later goes into a talk, but yeah, and after this, the aliens just fly away. Like, oops, our plan didn't work, let's just leave. Yeah, it's a little iffy, but, you know. Oh, I should mention that Kara also knows about the Dominators because they existed on her planet, I guess, when she was little. So we get some wraparound. Agent Smith has been reassigned to Antarctica, thanks to Kara. We get this nod to Brandon Routh's Superman when Kara walks between him and Felicity remarks saying, oh, it's like looking into a mirror, isn't it? You're not ruining this. It's like looking into a mirror, isn't it? To which he replies with, she kind of reminds me of my cousin. Remember the first time I said, I'm like, I get it. And there was a joke during part 1 where Mick's like, they call you Supergirl. I'm not gonna call you that. You can call me Kara. No. I'm gonna call you Skirt. So what are you gonna call when you need my help? Skirt. And I won't need help. As soon as they are about to get captured, Supergirl, help! That was funny. Yeah, and then we get a talk between Oliver and Barry, and a talk between Stein and Jax. Basically saying, my daughter, she's an aberration, whatever. But we don't need to tell them because I don't want to lose my daughter. I love my daughter. And Oliver and Barry have one of their famous talks and say we should do this again. But not like this, just, get together without having to save the world. Which never happens, by the way. Well, sort of. They try to do that with the wedding. And Crest that X, but it doesn't really work out. But yeah, I think it's a decent crossover. I just feel the whole Arrow 100 episode, it wasn't necessary to be a part of it. But, for what it was, it's fine. Yeah, so what are your thoughts on the Invasion crossover? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'm Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.